I came to therapy to talk about me. Why are we always talking about you? Who's the client and who's the therapist here? I can't even tell. What's happening? Hello, hello, lovely people. Welcome to my virtual couch. Happy Friday to you all. Happy Friday to ya. I hope you guys have some great plans because I do. So I'm really excited. Okay, so in my last video, I talked about how do you know if therapy is working and how to fire your therapist. So if you haven't watched that video, please look for that video in the description below. In this video was actually a request, so I'm kind of excited to talk about this. In this video, I'm going to talk about how do you know if you have a good therapist or a bad therapist. So let's get into it. All right, so tips to know if you have a good therapist. First, are they open-minded? Are you talking with a therapist that does not impose their personal views and beliefs onto you? Example, what if you go to a therapist and you say, my boyfriend and I are thinking about moving in together, or my girlfriend and I are thinking about moving in together because we're about to have a baby, and I think that's the best decision. And then you have the therapist say, you all are not even married. Why are you all getting pregnant? You all are not even married. Why are you all moving in together? That is the therapist's own personal beliefs that they are imposing onto you. It is not the therapist's job to impose their own personal beliefs onto you. So a good therapist is going to be open-minded, not be judgmental, not impose their own beliefs on you, and help you work through whatever that you're working through. Are they able to put your views aside? A good therapist is also open to seeking supervision for their client to review their cases. You might be asking yourself, how do I know if a therapist is seeking supervision? You can simply ask them. In my previous videos, I talked about questions to ask the therapist. And one of the questions was, do you seek supervision for your cases? For example, I am a board approved supervisor. Therefore, other therapists seek me out and pay me a fee for me to go over their cases. It is my job as their supervisor to make sure that they are operating at their highest ethical level. No matter how highest of the level that your therapist is, they should be open-minded to seeking consultation about their cases. They don't have to seek consultation for all their cases. However, they should have someone that they can go to when they are dealing with a challenging case. For example, even though I am a board approved supervisor, I also turn to my colleagues when I'm dealing with complex cases. I meet with my colleagues and we do a group supervision. And if I have a case that I'm having some challenges, I bring it up and they also help me to come up with a game plan of how I'm going to treat the client. A third way to determine if you have a good therapist is, does your therapist hold you accountable? Now, this might be a little bit controversial, but I need to talk about it. For example, I had a client and I recommended a book to them. I recommended a workbook and I wanted us to go over this workbook in the session because some of the symptoms that they were experiencing, I felt that the workbook would be very helpful in the session. The next session they came in, they said, you know what, Pamela, I got so busy, I didn't get it. Okay, that's fine. Therapy is not school. If you don't do your homework, you don't get in trouble. We just talk about what happened. Next session. Oh, Pamela, you know what? That book I forgot. What was the name of it again? All right, this is the name of the workbook. I want you to get in the next session. The third session, the client came in. You know what, Pamela? I totally forgot about that book. I'm so sorry. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's where me as a clinician, we need to have a conversation. What's happening? It is my job as your therapist to hold you accountable. Not all clients like that, but it's my job to make sure if I'm recommending something to you, what's happening that you're not doing it. Now, a good therapist will also dig a little bit deeper. Are you avoidant? Are you deflecting? Are you resistant? What's happening? And are we using busy as a way to deflect? When I dug a little bit deeper, I found out that Pamela, this workbook that you recommended me, it's really gonna make me think about things that I don't want to think about. And so I really have been avoiding it. So now my job as a clinician is to say, okay, let's talk about why you're avoiding this. And let me help you through this book. And you know what? I took out the book in session and I said, look, just take a preview of this book. And we're going to do it chapter by chapter. So a good therapist is going to hold you accountable. And as a client, you may not always like that. But listen, this is why you're in therapy too. We serve as your accountability partner. A fourth way to tell if you have a good therapist is your therapist versatile and able to adapt to whatever you're going through? So, for example, if 1 month you've been dealing with stress, and so the therapists have been working with you on stress management techniques, and the next month you are dealing with self esteem issues, but the therapist cannot adapt to that. For example, the therapist is in the box. Well, I only use this style of therapy and that works for this issue. So because you're coming to me for another issue, I'm having trouble. Now, the therapist may not tell you that they're having trouble, but you can see that they were good at helping me with issue A, but now that I'm coming to them with issue B, they can't help me. So a good therapist is able to adapt to whatever issue that you're going through. Now, let me back up. If a therapist cannot help you, a good therapist will also refer you to an outside therapist. Now, remember in my last video, I talked about I had a client that was looking for a type of therapy that I did not provide. I needed to be honest with her. I told her the advice and the type of therapy that she was looking for. So I found her another therapist. I did a warm transfer. But as far as versatility, does the therapist have more than one modality that they can help treat you? Do I have a bad therapist? First, are they talking about themselves too much? So I come into therapy and I say, oh, you know what? I had a stressful day. The kids were getting on my nerves. My husband was pissing me off. I'm annoyed at the world. And you go as a therapist, yeah, me too. Let me tell you what happened with my day to day. Like, I had all these clients and I just couldn't fit them in. And then, whoa, 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 whoa. So if you feel that the therapist is turning the therapy session about them, we got a problem. Houston, we have a problem. Here's the thing. In therapy, there are certain where a therapist can self-disclose if it be beneficial to the therapy. That's in our code of ethics. That's perfectly fine. But if a therapist is always self-disclosing to the point where there's a boundary issue, that's not a good therapist. A second way to determine if a therapist is not a good therapist is, are they trying to have a relationship with you outside of therapy? I'm not just talking about an intimate relationship, I'm talking about a relationship in general. For example, is your therapist trying to be friends with you? Girl, after session, let's go shopping. That there are some therapists that try to have a relationship with you. I have heard of cases where I had a client come to me and say, I had to stop seeing my therapist because my therapist kept trying to go hang out with me to have a drink. This is a male therapist seeing another male therapist, and that therapist said, I want to see what you're like in a social setting, so let's go have a drink. When I looked in that client's history, I also saw that that client has had an issue with drinking before. So why are you, as a therapist, if you did your homework, trying to have a drink with the person outside the session? Totally inappropriate. And that therapist lose their license for that. But guess what? It does happen. So how do I know if I have a bad therapist? Are they dismissive? Every time you go to your therapist and you try to talk to a therapist, oh girl, that's nothing. Oh, don't worry about it. You're fine. You feel not heard by your therapist. Do you feel like your therapist is being dismissive of you? That's not a good sign of an effective therapist. And lastly, is your therapist using a therapy style they're not trained in? I want to go back to when I talked about a good therapist and being versatile. And I want to make sure there's a clear difference. There's a difference between a therapist operating in just in the box and a therapist using a modality they're not trained in. I believe as a therapist, if you're trained in something and if you're actively using that modality, then you're more effective. But if I took a training back in 2019 and I have not used that therapy style on a consistent basis, so if I am not equipped to be using a certain type of therapy style and I'm using it anyway because I want your business, I want your money, that's a bad therapist. Some of you are not going to believe what I'm going to say, but a bad therapist is when they're sleeping in session and nodding off. I am not lying, you guys. I have heard and I have seen instances where therapists do sleep. I am not lying to you all. So if that happens, that's not a good therapist. They need to figure it out. They need to take a break. It does happen. So if your therapist is sleeping or nodding off while you're in session, that's not a sign of a good therapist. Find another one. Let me know what your experience has been with and what are signs that of a good and a bad therapist that I did not talk about in this video. Leave it in the comment below. I want to thank you all for your love and your support and your encouragement. I am trying to grow this channel, you guys, so please like, please subscribe and comment, and I will see you all in my next video. Take care. Bye-bye.